By the time humans were able to generate and contain dark matter, it took us a couple of years before we could build the revolutionary technology needed to destroy black holes. So, once the Earth started to be attracted by the large gravitational field of the black hole at the edge of the galaxy, we were more than prepared to face it. We quickly adapted a spacecraft to have the ability to capture, contain, and destroy the dark matter. The mechanism behind this addition was highly complex and difficult to understand. Less than a century ago, the destruction of this kind of matter was considered impossible, but we had achieved it. It was then that the team that would be sent on the mission was assembled. We were all experienced astronauts who had been thoroughly trained to make contact with the black hole. The mission was almost suicidal. If we were trapped in the gravitational field of the hole, we wouldn't be able to escape. Foreseeing this, we were even forced to sign a liability waiver and to prepare a will in case things went wrong. When the technology on which your life depends has only been tested under ideal conditions in laboratories, it's natural to feel worried. Anyway, not completing the mission was not an option. If we failed, we would die. We would be sucked into the black hole, and all those who were dear to us would be able to do nothing but watch as death rapidly approached them. If we succeeded, we'd all be saved. I felt no fear when we were ejected into the stratosphere, neither when the gravity of the hole facilitated our goals. Feeling fear was not an option. Our trip lasted exactly 311 days. In normal conditions, reaching the ends of our galaxy would take 100,000 light years. We made it in less than a year. Any doubt that our planet was in danger was overmastered by the immensity of the dark monster that was in front of us. The feeling of approaching a black hole is indescribable. There's no light, and there seems to be nothing around me besides my consciousness. Activating the machinery wasn't easy, and the lack of light only made it more complicated. We had been trained to execute the controls blindly. We just didn't count on Richard having a fulminant cardiac arrest. In the last seconds of consciousness, I could experience how my body was stretched and crushed by gravity until I was thinner than a sheet of paper. My bones ached as they were broken. My internal organs burned, and I could feel the blood seeping from every pore in my body. The pain was so intense that I collapsed in the remains of my seat in the ship that folded like origami. When I awoke, my eyes were burned by a bright light that hurt my retinas. I thought I had reached heaven. I'd never really been a believer, but it was the only explanation my aching brain could conceive. It will come as no surprise to you that my assumptions were wrong. Not only was I not dead, my body was in perfect condition. The pain I felt was only in my head. My crewmates also seemed as alive as I. Except Richard, of course, and the three of them that didn't seem to have signs of evident damage. The ship, on the other hand, it was completely destroyed. I got up from the floor. My chair no longer existed. I went to check the front panel. It was completely ruined, emitting sparks and smoke. Since my crewmates didn't wake up, I went to check what we had left. There wasn't much. We'd kept the suits and the oxygen tanks and nothing else. The ship had large gaps where the machinery to trap the dark matter should be, and also where the food storage was supposed to be, and I didn't even know where we were. I peeked through one of the gaps on the side of the ship and looked where we had landed. It seemed to be a planet, an inhabited planet. The sky of this unknown planet was bright purple. No clouds present. The ground was covered with some sort of algae that resembled red, moist sponge. And looking at the horizon, several stark-looking mountains could be seen. And the animals, I had no idea what they were, but creatures of the most diverse and bizarre appearance covered this red plain. They seemed to be very interested in us. I ran to lift my crewmates from the ground, and they looked at me confused as their minds emerged into consciousness. There was no time for any explanations, and I ordered them to take only essentials with them and not to bother to put on their suits. Obviously, we didn't need them. We had no time to wonder how we had escaped from the black hole as we tried to blend in with the environment to avoid attracting the creature's attention. We stuck very close to the ground all the way. It stained us with some kind of red ink that spread the plants as we stepped on them. We advanced very slowly, without being able to speak. Our training had not conditioned us for this. They, my crewmates, followed me with the trust that is only placed in a leader, and I begged anyone who would listen to guide me along the right path. The sun had been replaced by darkness when we reached the base of the mountain. We quickly checked the first cave we came across, and to our surprise and good fortune, found that it was empty. We barely managed to lie down, huddled on the ground, when we were overcome by exhaustion. I'm sure that a day on that planet is much longer than one on Earth, because when we woke up hours later, the sky was still dark. We waited until the sun peeked over the horizon before we dared to leave the safety of the cave. The night's sleep had not helped to alleviate the confusion we felt. Craig had managed to bring along a portable radio with him, but it was unable to pick up any signal. We were completely lost. Lost and alone. Determined to survive, we walked at least half of the way we had done the day before in search of water. If we didn't drink some kind of liquid, we wouldn't last more than 3 days. It took us some time, but we finally got to a stream with a crystal clear liquid. Our throats tightened as we watched it flow. We were desperate to drink something. Anything. We followed the water upstream for a couple of miles to find its source. Barely resisting the temptation to dive into the liquid, we advanced until our feet ached and didn't stop till we caught sight of the intimidating animals drinking and bathing in the stream. I saw my reflection in the gently rippling liquid. I looked disheveled, deep, dark circles under my eyes. My body was covered in red, almost like blood. My instincts were telling me that drinking from the stream would not be a good idea, but my colleagues disagreed and were very vocal about it.
We're going to die here anyway. I'd like to not suffer in the process if you don't mind,
Craig said to end the discussion we'd gotten into. The balance of power had shifted and he had prevailed over me. I had no choice but to accept the situation, and I turned around to make sure that the animals didn't attack us from behind. That's when I heard the first scream. Craig was screaming at the top of his lungs, and it wasn't more than 2 seconds before our other crewmates followed him. The 3 of them were screaming as if they were about to go crazy, tearing at their chests with their nails as if they wanted to get to their own stomachs. And when the drops of blood began to fall to the ground, the animals became aware of our presence and cautiously began to approach us. I really tried to bring them with me, but they were unable to hear me. Their screams wouldn't stop, and their eyes looked pale and glassy, as if they were no longer of this world. Finally, I had to accept that if there were no other way out, there was no other option but to run. I ran with all the strength my legs allowed me to the place where we'd spent the night. The animals didn't follow me. My companions had served as enough of a distraction. In the solitude of the rocky cave, I tried to think what to do. I couldn't contact the Earth, and I was on an unknown planet. I had nothing to drink and nothing to eat. How long could I survive? 1 week? 2? I dropped my head against the stone wall to try to cover the emotional pain with the physical pain. There would be no salvation for me. I think I will look for the most painless way to end my life. I need to kill myself before the temptation to drink that liquid to quench my thirst becomes too much to bear. The madness I saw in their eyes is more terrifying to me than any kind of death.